Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of 10 Forward Weekly. I am your host. My name's Mike Fadum, also known as Ambassador Kel. And I am joined this week by the amazingly multi-talented Dr. Erin Macdonald.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much for coming on the show. It is awesome. The whole journey of how you've gotten into our game has been awesome, and I kind of want to dive into that. I know it started with the backdrop that you have behind you right now, which is one of my favorite spots in the game. Tell me a little bit about how that all got started.
Yeah, so I had known of Star Trek Online, but I am famously, as people are discovering, not an MMO player. I am a single player RPG gamer all the way. But I put out a
so simple and not complex in any way.
Not overwhelming at all. No. But yeah, I put out a call on Twitter for Star Trek backgrounds, particularly when all of this sort of quarantine, we all moved on to Zoom. We got our virtual background set up. I wanted like an office or a ready room or something that I could just kind of pretend to be large and in charge at Starfleet. And people sent me a link to these Star Trek Online backgrounds. And when I started using them, then that got the attention of some of the Star Trek Online people on Twitch. And then they were like, so you have the background, but do you play the game? And I was like, ugh.
Yeah,
and so after
one of our environment artists, Nick DeGood, messaged me. He was like, Erin's using our background. Do you know if she plays? And I was like, I don't. Let's find out.
It's that's probably pretty accurate to hear that side of the story, because then people started trying to find out. And yeah, after probably, I'd say about 6 solid weeks of people being like, you should try Star. I mean, we'll help you. You have a Twitch, like you're a part, like you have people on Twitch. We will help you play. And I was like, oh, okay, I guess. And so I was still so chicken about it that I didn't want to embarrass myself, because I really don't like doing first playthroughs on streaming, like first, tutorial, figure out the controls, all of that stuff. I don't like to do that on stream. So I picked it up again. I played through until I got to level 10, and then I was like,
really good way to start.
Yes. Then I hit the stream button, and then it took off from there.
That's awesome. So tell me a little bit about your Star Trek Online experience so far. What kind of character are you playing?
So I'm just staying very on brand. I've got a redheaded science officer from the Federation.
Nice.
Yeah, I figure for any time, whether it's an MMO or any other sort of role-playing game, I dive in just playing kind of how I would play. And then once I get a sense for the world and the characters and how the missions go and how the storylines unfold, then if I do another playthrough, I'll try to shake it up. Sometimes I play Mass Effect the same way every time.
Oh yeah,
that's
oh god, everybody's like, oh, you gotta play a Renegade version just to see how it is, and I'm like, nope. I am a paragon of goodness. Top choice.
I'm a paragon of goodness, and I don't want to cry because my squad is suddenly mean to everyone.
Right.
But yeah, it's been great. I mean, I'm jumped into, on the Starfleet side because I know that world very well. The only other, I think now that I've started to play and get the mechanics, I'm feeling an appeal to once I play more.
Yeah.
Not starting a new character yet, but I think the next one for me would be fun to do a Klingon for sure.
The
like
Untitled, once you get it, it's really hard to get rid of. Then suddenly you have 45 characters, and it's a problem.
I believe that, but it's been good. I got to captain right before the patch from last week, and so I got my Intrepid class ship, which for some reason I mulled over when they dangled the Defiant in front of me. And then my partner, who was in the chat, was like, you're kidding me, right? He's like, show me your arm, which I have a Voyager tattoo, and let's go look at the blueprint of Voyager on our wall, and then tell me again that you're thinking of choosing the Defiant. I was like,
man.
All right.
That's fair. That called out. That's fair. Oh my god, how excited are you for the news you probably already knew about Janeway coming back?
Oh my god, yeah, I've been sitting on that for a long time. I didn't realize how stressed I was about giving up that secret until it was out. And then I felt wait.
we had a meeting with CBS last week that at least 10 minutes of it was us going, so what can you tell us about Janeway?
Right. Oh my God. I honestly, for me, when I found out this news, I had just got the Voyager tattoo. Obviously, everyone at CBS knows my obsession with Janeway. It's a story, we tell all the time about how important Janeway was to representation in women in science.
Yeah.
And so they had seen my tattoo, and then I had a meeting with the team running Prodigy. And it was like I walked in that door and everyone was like, you're going to want to sit down because we have something to tell you. And I just, honestly, I mean, it's amazing. And the whole team, the whole experience, I love that show from beginning to end, every aspect of it. But after that first meeting, I just got in my car and I'm driving back, in LA. So I've got time.
Yeah.
And it just starts hitting me that I was like going to be editing lines for that character, and I just bursted and I'm like just sobbing on the God. 405, which I know in LA is like not the first or last time someone's
people
done
looked
that.
Out the window and were like, all right, so the movie got canceled, or
Exactly. But yeah, I mean, I'm just thrilled that everyone else got to feel that, because it's a big deal. It's really cool.
Yeah. Somebody in chat asked what the news about Janeway was. If you missed it, Janeway is going to be back in Star Trek Prodigy, played by oh my God, my brain just
Kate Mulgrew.
Kate Mulgrew.
You're
Thank
good.
you.
I do that all the time. You're forgiven. I do it all the time.
But yeah, she'll be back. Star Trek Prodigy is the Nickelodeon Star Trek show that's coming sometime next year. And it sounds, I know more things than some people know, and it sounds amazing, and that's all I can say.
I'm very, very excited for the world
what is that like?
Find the show.
Because you live in that world, like you said, you got your start on Discovery Season 3, you've been working on Prodigy, I assume a little bit of Picard and Lower Decks as well, but I assume, like all of us, a lot of your friends are Trekkies. Are you just vibrating in place all the time?
It's so funny. Yeah, it's one of those weird things. Getting a job like this is a long road. It's a long series of events that happens that leads up to having this. So at no point does it feel like super climactic. Like you're just sitting at home one day and you get a call from CBS and they're like, we're hiring you. Your life is about to change. Like, it's not like that. It's all of these sort of meetings and discussions and slowly ramping up and getting to know the people involved. And, so as you mentioned, I got started on Discovery, but then they expanded my role about a year ago, where they just said, hey, look, it would be useful to have this resource available, not just to Discovery, but to all of the shows. And we'd love for you to do that. And so it's not saying that like I am a consultant on every show. It's not saying that my role is the same for every show either. Sometimes it's way more involved, from helping figure out storylines to helping figure out, arcs, just, where we kind of just sit around the table and have a discussion, sitting in the writers' rooms. But sometimes it's just read these scripts and tell us if we did something dumb. And I'm fine with that. I have no problem with that.
Oh God, I must read Star Trek scripts. That's so terrible.
I know. I got super called out one time over the summer when my partner's kids were here, and his 8-year-old daughter just like came in, and I have Star Trek on the TV. I was reading a Star Trek script. I was wearing a Star Trek shirt. I had Star Trek socks on, and I was drinking out of a Star Trek mug. And she just very seriously said to me, I think there's too much Star Trek.
And you patiently explained to her that that's not possible, right?
Yeah, exactly. You'll learn one day. Yeah, it was. I was definitely called out.
I just had to laugh because you said it's been a long road, and so they've been singing the Enterprise theme in chat for about 10 minutes now.
I'm so sorry.
No, it's okay. It is one of the joys of my life. If you ever get a chance, I'll have to send you for. At New Year's Eve last year, a bunch of the developers had a party, and we all got sick of singing Auld Lang Syne, and somebody put on Faith of the Heart, and there's just a video of a room full of fairly drunk people singing it at the top of their lungs, and it's amazing.
That's pretty brilliant. I will say I have kind of been going around just occasionally just going like, it's been a long road. Getting from there to here.
So when you're, as a science consultant on Star Trek has always been, sort of the fairly serious sci-fi. Like they try to get their science right all the time, but also there's a long, history of anti-time particles and things of that nature. How do you approach when you're looking at a script, or like when you're sitting in the writer's room? What's like, oh no, that would never happen, and what's like, yeah, we can space wizard that away.
Yeah, that's a tough call. And I think that that's one of those things where having that relationship and the experience working with sci-fi writers, that's where that kind of came into play with me expanding this role and moving this job forward. Because it really is one of those where you kind of have to know the writers, know what they're going for, and then reading a story, whether it's an outline or getting just the script and it's one of its drafts, to just go, okay, I think we can let that go, and because it's not just Star Trek. You said it perfectly. There's a long history of it being associated with science, but there's all been, crystalline entities and non-corporeal beings. There's all sorts of nonsense that we love and still hold dear to our heart.
Somebody in chat, Ultra Z in chat, asked what your reaction would have been if you were in the Voyager writers' room when they pitched Threshold.
It's so funny. It's so great that they asked that question, because this thought occurred to me just a couple of days ago of like, if I got Threshold script, to be honest, I probably would have let like that first half where they're explaining warp 10 and that you exist in all place at all time. I'm like, I'm not opposed to how it's described, but the moment Tom Paris's tongue falls out, I'm like, I'm done.
Yep.
Nope.
Hang on, guys. People every year, people ask us to make a follow-up storyline as to what happened to their lizard babies. Where are the lizard babies?
God. I know. I do need to, once we get back into doing conventions, I'm going to go on a troll for that Threshold action figure. I feel like I just need to have it at this point in my life.
I didn't know there was an action figure.
There is an action figure, complete
God.
with lizard babies.
Oh
Yeah, Garrett Wong pointed this out to me. Yeah.
oh, Garrett.
My
We
God,
finally promoted
so
him,
good.
by the way. I don't know if you've gotten far enough in the game to see that. He is a captain in Star Trek Online.
Yes, I have not come across personally, but I was flagged that was a case, so I'm very proud of him. Very proud.
Very proud. Our little boy is grown up.
Exactly. But it's just to kind of finish that question though about the, how much of the science, because that is a tricky call. And the important thing to point out is that I'm not there to tell the story. I am not a writer. I'm not credited as a writer. That's not what my job is. My job there is to make sure primarily that they don't say anything wrong. And so if they want to have some kind of crazy storyline that's off the wall, great. I have no problem with that. As long as we if we're going to explain it in a way that's not contradictory to modern science. And I think that's where most of the work is making sure that doesn't happen. Otherwise, I mean, again, I'm a Star Trek fan. So yeah, just be free, do whatever crazy stuff you want to do. I love those episodes. It's just, making sure you didn't call a star system a galaxy, and then we'll be good.
Yeah. I was going to ask if you had an example, but all of that stuff comes from stuff nobody's seen yet, so never mind.
Yeah. Ask me in a year. We're good.
All right. We'll have you back after Discovery Season 3 ends, and we'll ask you all the questions. So on page 32 of episode 197.
If you think that this isn't an exact replicate of my stress dreams...
Oh man,
that's good.
Oh, God.
I have to be
where the
prepared.
comic book guy is just firing questions at you.
I know, and it's happened to me before, even before I started consulting. I got started in the Star Trek universe on the official capacity, giving talks at Star Trek Las Vegas. And my very first Star Trek Las Vegas convention, my stress dreams leading up to that had to do with the fact that the only suitcases I own are Star Wars suitcases. And I know. And I was so stressed out about having to roll up to a Star Trek convention with Star Wars suitcases. I overcame it, and it's just funny, and everyone is obviously lovely.
Yes.
I just had never been to a Star Trek convention before, and I didn't know what to expect.
Whether it's going to be that fandom that's welcoming or that fandom that's like, get out.
I know. I was very stressed.
How dare you bring Darth Vader into this environment?
Exactly. But we were all good. There was no one blinked an eye. If anything, it was a funny thing.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
I made the mistake of wearing a Star Wars shirt on the stream last week because I forgot what day it was, and I've gotten a lot of flack for that on Twitter.
Yeah, that happens.
Yeah.
I've been there.
So tell me a little bit about, you mentioned you started doing talks at STLV. What was the journey from that to actually getting the gig with Star Trek?
Yeah, so the STLV gig, that also had its own journey. I won't say it again if anyone evaded the earworm from before. But it had its own path too. And for the most part, that was a process of going through other sci-fi conventions, like particularly Dragon Con was where I got my start with that. And then I just had some talks there that were the science of Star Trek, but also science of Mass Effect, science like general artificial gravity and science fiction, those sort of things. And they were really popular. So I started taking them to other conventions. But then one year I put together this just a straight up physics and Star Trek talk that I thought was pretty good. And I had moved out to LA by then, and I had got to know some of the writers, and, just through knowing people and being out here, there was an opportunity to go to Vegas and give my talk at that convention. And the great part was, stress dreams aside, but everyone was so fabulous. Kind of, they were excited. They've had talks like that in Vegas before. And so it was really an honor for me to be able to go and just give this solo talk. And then I think I had maybe one other talk that I gave that year. But it was packed. It was packed. If people have been to Star Trek Las Vegas at the Rio, the CBS All Access stage is where they were booking talks like mine. And that's the tiny stage at Quarks.
Yep, the one next to where everyone's buying snacks, which is actually where I've heard some of my favorite panels over the years, because I'll go to get a sandwich and then I'll be like, wait, this sounds cool, I'm gonna sit down.
Yeah, totally. And it's great how they do that. And I think CBS has programmed that stage really, really well, because then the other two stages are more focused on the celebrity, the fandom, more of what like creation does, right? And then the CBS All Access stage is very much a CBS thing. And so that, but for people who haven't been, that area is not big. As you mentioned, it's by the snack stand. It's in Quarks, which in principle I love.
Yeah.
But it was standing room only, and it was that way for my talk again later that week. And then so people at CBS noticed that. I got to know them just being there in person. And then the Star Trek cruise people noticed that as well. And so they reached out after Vegas and offered me a position on the cruise to come give a science talk, which was awesome. That was like oh, sure.
Oh man, now I get stress streams on a cruise ship. It's great.
Don't even, man. I was so... That was rough, because being on a cruise is not something I particularly ever had on a bucket list, but I was not about to turn down a Star Trek cruise. That night before, I was in not a good headspace. But it was wonderful, and the crowds there were fabulous. Again, huge. I think that's one of those things that Star Trek goes through bouts of recognizing, and then it kind of moves away, and then it goes back to how important the science aspect is in Star Trek. And it's not so much because the science is right all the time, because we get episodes like Threshold and we get other, Q magic and all that fun stuff. But because it inspires so many people to go into science. And from that, that's why you have this fandom has that huge interaction of Star Trek fans and scientists and engineers. And so even on the Star Trek cruise, that you pad out a lot more content. And so I offered just a straight up science talk about, what I used to do research in gravitational waves. And it was rammed. It was rammed. And because people just are interested in science, and people who are Star Trek fans just have a passion for that. So it's really, really interesting. And that's why I'm glad kind of CBS picked up on that and started to find more ways to integrate that into their content.
Yeah, that's awesome. So gravitational waves, huh?
And that's really how it all started, because I was in graduate school. I had kind of just discovered Star Trek. Like, the Kelvin film had just come out previously when I was an undergraduate. My fellow physics fans had introduced me to Star Trek. Again, that Venn diagram. a lot of them there. But then I moved overseas by myself, and I just had friends who were like, you know, you should a Star Trek binge, I think, is in your future. And so that was when I dove into Voyager, and I was like, I know it at the time, like I know it now, but at the time I didn't realize how much watching the crew of Voyager try to make it on there in the Delta Quadrant was so much parallel to like how I felt being in a country by myself. And this is all hindsight. But at the time, I just dove into Voyager. And anytime I wanted to give up, anytime I was frustrated, grad school sucks. I was doing a PhD in like 3.5 years. I was burnt out.
God.
I was, it was awful. But it had lots of good moments. But overall, doing your PhD sucks.
I've heard.
And it's got a reputation. But you know, anytime I really wanted to walk away and there were those moments, I would watch Voyager. And genuinely, and I put this in my thesis, in my acknowledgments to Captain Janeway. I could not have done that thesis without her. And when that's the serious part. The less serious part is when I was very much procrastinating working on my thesis. I was also watching a lot of Star Trek. And I was like, I'm getting a PhD in gravitational waves, which is ripples in the fabric of space-time. I think I might have the skills now to figure out how warp drive works.
That was going to be my next question, was how do we build a warp drive? How do we make this happen?
And that was really the origin of it. I think because those first big talks that I gave were very much space-time in science fiction. How do you go faster than light? How do you have artificial gravity? And I always would joke around that I was like, I'm an aspiring warp drive scientist. Like now I kind of am.
So what's your favorite FTL theory for how FTL could actually work?
Oh, I mean, Star Trek gets credit for a good reason. I think it's one of those few that's very like, it's something that can be engineered, and mathematically it's not terrible. And so for people who might not be up on warp drive technology, the idea is in our fabric of space-time, and I'll just say the bowling ball and the trampoline. People who followed me for a long time.
Quantum physics for babies. I have it in the other room.
It's okay. It's okay. But I can do this. No worries. But I've done it so many times that people who've seen me give this talk have turned it into a drinking game. So we're talking about the bowling ball and the trampoline.
Yep.
But the whole concept.
Mass.
Exactly. Right. Right. But however heavy it is, that dips space-time, and it makes it harder to travel on the surface of space-time. If you have less mass, you can go faster with a little less energy involved. And then when you have zero mass, you just coast on the surface of space-time in a straight line, and that's the speed of light. That's what light does, because light doesn't have any mass. And that's why that's the limit, because as soon as you build a starship, now you have mass. Now you're dipping space-time. And you're not able to go faster than the speed of light. But what warp drive does is it says, okay, so nothing on the surface of space-time can go faster than light, but nothing says space-time itself can't go. It can go at any speed at once. It can go faster than the speed of light. So the concept of warp drive is to essentially build a bubble of space-time around your ship and then have that propel you faster than the speed of light. So it's just this like bubble that's propelling you through space-time much faster. And the nice thing is that it keeps space-time itself where your ship is flat. So you're not, or however, it's normal space-time there. So you're not going to break any physics while space-time is warped around you. And the math has been done on this. I was not the first person to figure out the calculations. Not the first nerd in this environment. No. Not by a long shot. But they figured it out because if you want to bend space-time, you need mass. If you want to bend space-time such that it's warped around your ship, you're gonna need a lot. But Einstein also came up with this idea of E equals mc squared. So if you don't have mass to bend space-time, in theory, you could use an equivalent amount of energy in order to bend space-time. But when they did those first calculations for how much energy it would take to build a warp bubble, it was all the energy.
Just all the energy in the universe? Just
all the energy that has
God.
ever existed. So that was disappointing. They have played with the geometries such that they still have developed warp drive, and they got that equivalent energy down to about the energy of the mass of a semi-truck, which sounds reasonable.
But that's a lot of energy.
It's a lot of energy. The nuclear bomb is 1 teaspoon of matter converted to energy, and so this is a semi-truck worth of matter converted to energy. It's a lot. And this is how I always joke, this is why Zefram Cochrane had a drinking problem.
Yeah.
I would too.
Well, especially if you're building it, in the middle of nowhere with a box of scraps in a cave.
Exactly. There's so many things that can go wrong so fast.
So I had a Discovery Science question come up in chat that I saw soar by. I don't know if this may be more of a biological question, but it was asked by one of our fans who's who's getting their PhD right now in paleontology. But they were wondering about the giant tardigrades in season 1 of Discovery and what sort of adaptations they would have had to go through to not, explode from their giant size.
That's the problem. Yeah, nail, meat, hammer. That's it. So the funny thing is, and I can kind of speak to this a little bit because I have a colleague, Mohammed Noor, who also has done, we've called him in to help with some of Discovery as well. He's a biology professor at Duke. People can find him. He's got a YouTube channel called BioTrekkie Explains. Oh, nice. So he's got some great stuff.
I just love hearing that sentence in your brain go, we called him in to help with stuff.
I was filtering through more of to what extent, but yeah. Valid. But we've given Science of Star Trek talks together. And so particularly with Discovery, and again, we did not consult on season 1 or 2, but we've broken down the science and tried to kind of help explain it. So I've heard his explanation, so I'm stealing from him for how this works. The funny thing with tardigrades is I get why they want to use them. Why in science fiction, tardigrades are awesome. First of all, they look adorable. Second of all, we can do tardigrades are incredibly resilient. And one of the big kind of news breaking things that people discovered with tardigrades is that some of them have survived the vacuum of space. The key word there is some. And I learned this from Mohammed, and it is a great fact. They put up a sample of tardigrades into the vacuum and temperature of space, at which point, like the tardigrade in Discovery, they dehydrate, they shrivel up, they go into this stasis mode, and 99% of them died. So, which is horrible. But
I never read that in all of the articles about the immortal tardigrade.
Yeah, a few survived. So it's by no means that we can have a colony of tardigrades just living free in space. And then the key too, I think, with Discovery is that in season 1, when they introduced Ripper and they introduced the tardigrade, they do explicitly say we have found a tardigrade-like creature, and then they freely just use the term tardigrade for the rest of the series. Yes.
Right after it eats poor Rekha Sharma's face.
Poor Rekha Sharma. She just has the worst luck. Also a good friend. But the last thing with the tardigrades that is really interesting science-wise is that one of the big science dialogue things that was very fascinating that they worked into Discovery was the fact that the tardigrade could use horizontal gene transfer, which is how Stamets then is able to operate the spore drive. And that horizontal gene transfer was a big news article about tardigrades that this article was published. The lead author's name was Boothby. I just have to say it because it's brilliant. Thank you. But they published this paper saying that they found that 14% of the tardigrade's DNA came from somewhere else. So it was this horizontal gene transfer that happened, which was apparently, according to my biology friends, it's a huge number. And it made news articles about that, oh my God, these tardigrades, they have this ability to do horizontal gene transfer beyond anything we've ever seen before. And then there was a paper a year later that redacted it. Essentially what happened is they got all these tardigrades, they ground them all up.
Oh no.
Biology is so weird to
That
me.
is.
And then analyzed the DNA, but they didn't clean the samples enough that there was still other stuff in there that contaminated the samples. So that's where that came from. But those redactions don't necessarily make the news in the same way the big announcements do.
The redaction never makes the news as much as the original does, which is why We Got This Covered is still in business.
Right. But I do, Muhammad always says this too, we got to give credit to the writers. At least they tried. I mean, that's a good effort of trying to incorporate some real science into their scripts. So kudos.
And turning
to
it
them.
into a giant monster who eats poor Rekha Sharma's face.
Kills Rekha Sharma. I love you, Rekha.
That's all right. She's in our game now. It's fine. Everything's fine.
Yes, yeah, I love that. I've done a few panels with her. I really, really like
She's
Rekha.
amazing.
She was on the cruise as well. She's a lot of fun. I'm glad she's been so involved in the game.
Nice. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about your love for Star Trek. I'm guessing based off of this conversation, the favorite season answer is Voyager and favorite captain answer is Janeway, but correct me if I'm wrong there.
I am going to correct you on one of those points.
All right.
Yes. Janeway, I will die for. She is my captain. Oh, captain, my captain. Janeway is, she's everything. But my favorite series is actually Deep Space Nine.
This is my shocked face. My face that is shocked. Yeah. I have never heard that answer to that question before from a Trekkie in my life.
I know. Some people who have seen my streams saw when everyone in the chat, when I was kind of going and trying to figure out MMOs and trying to understand this concept of like, there's a storyline in an open world.
Yeah.
Guess what? You can go do other things when you have quests waiting for you. That was a new concept to me. Because everything...
Quest overload is a real thing, man.
I'm trying to manage it. It's very overwhelming. But I'm used to getting cocky in a BioWare game and just being like, I'm going to go over here because this place looks cool. No, death awaits you because you're not leveled up yet.
Yeah.
So that's what I figured would happen. But everyone in the chat was like, go to Deep Space Nine.
Yeah.
I lost my brain. It was the coolest thing. I may have cried a little bit. I went straight to Quarks. I found my 3 sitting areas. I found my primary chair, my backup chair, and my backup to the backup chair when I want a quiet spot.
Nice. Yeah, our environment artist Nick, who made Deep Space Nine, is actually in chat right now, which is why I bring it up. He spent like 5 years working on that. Like the project got started and stopped so many times, and it's so amazing how real it feels and all the work they went into making it.
I love it. There have been times legitimately when I've like not been streaming, but I need to do, inventory management. And I will log on and just fly to Deep Space Nine just so I can sit at Quarks to just go through my inventory.
Yep.
So good job.
It's fabulous. I'll send you a link over email, but we did a video where Nick took Chase Masterson, J.G. Hertzler, and a couple other people from Deep Space Nine through the map as he was working on it, and they sort of were like talking about memories like they were actually there, and it's just one of the coolest things I've ever seen in my life.
So cool. That's so cool. Oh my god. Yeah, I love Deep Space Nine. I'm watching it. One of the other shows that I do on a weekly basis.
Max Rodinchik. Thank you, Nick. Sorry, continue.
Was with it's with a friend of mine who's watching Star Trek for the first time, and she's well into, we did Voyager and TNG, but we're doing Deep Space Nine now for the first time, and watching it with someone who's watching it for the first time is just, it's so good. I have a House of Martok tattoo as well.
Oh, hell yeah. Yeah. I would follow that Klingon into hell.
Oh my god, right?
Yeah.
Right?
Oh god, it was so hard not to fanboy all over poor JG when he was here.
God, I know. I've met him a couple times and my brain short circuit. There's only a few of the Star Trek actors that my brain literally short circuits around. Kate Mulgrew is one of them, but J.G. Hertzler as well. I'm just like, oh my god. It's Martok. It's Martok. It's the leader of my house.
My Chancellor. What do you need, Chancellor?
What can I do for you? What can I do?
What's been your biggest nerd out moment since you've started working on Star Trek? What's the thing that's just been like, holy shit, I can't, if you could talk about it, like, holy shit, I can't believe this is happening.
Yeah, so now that I can talk about it, thankfully only a few days later, finding out that Kate Mulgrew and that I would be helping with lines for Captain Janeway. That was incredible. But another great, just one of it. I mean, you phrased it brilliantly. Just one of those moments that you just kind of like, what the hell? Was when I did a panel with Jonathan Frakes. On the interaction of science and Hollywood, and it was a virtual panel. So we did it this year. This summer. And I had met Frakes a couple times at the conventions. And for some reason, I mean, I love the guy. His energy is infectious. He's a Star Trek fan to his core. We were on the first cruise together. He manages to like keep everyone going, and he's so positive and so friendly. And so I worship the dude. I just think he's amazing as a human being. And then he remembers me, which is like, what? Hi, do you remember me? And he's like, yeah, Erin, what's up?
It's like, oh, you know my name. I'm just gonna go cry in a corner for a while.
I know. And then, but this was like, so I hadn't seen Frakes since we had publicly announced that I was working on all the Star Trek shows. Because that was, it takes time for those announcements to come out. And so, when we were planning this panel, he was like, hey, do you just want to like hop on the phone and chat and just for a little while so we can kind of talk through this stuff? And I'm like, yeah, sure.
That'd be great. Thanks.
And then my phone rang. and of course, I mean, he's not, we ended up chatting for ages, and we laughed about, some of the projects that had been going on. And he said this too publicly in our panel that was incredibly touching and a huge moment for me. That's why it brought to my mind when you asked that question, was when he was just like, as sort of he didn't say this, but the implication was like, as a ranking member of the Star Trek family, I want to personally thank you and welcome you into the Star Trek family, and you deserve to be here, and I can't wait to see what you do. And that's what I did.
And you did not fall out of your chair. How?
Mentally, I did.
Oh God.
Yeah, I can keep my cool around Frakes. I think because he's so engaging, and I think anyone who's met him, even at at the convention, at autograph tables and photo sessions, he's present, he's in the moment, and he wants to meet you. But so I can kind of be cool around him. Like I said, there's just that handful. No matter how many times, I'm just like, hi.
Yeah. Oh, that's always so fun to see.
Yeah.
All right. Well, let's see. I'm trying to think if I have any more. If I just wanted to, we could just keep nerding about Star Trek forever, of course. I'm trying to see if I have any more questions about your actual job, though.
Oh, that's fair.
That's fair.
Yeah. I'm sure people in the chat, it is frustrating. It's one of those hardest things. And it was hard for me to get used to. And just being in LA too, is like how much, first of all, the big things that I've learned is how much work goes on behind these scenes. That it's like these shows are going well before they ever make it to air. And now that I work in pre-production, as these scripts are being developed, it's like my partner said to me the other night when we were talking about Discovery coming out, he was like, do you remember season 3? And I'm like, I don't know. It was so long ago that I touched that stuff. And I feel like I've come so far since then, now being exposed not just to more shows, because I'd been working on other sci-fi shows before doing this and sci-fi books and stuff, but being more immersed in like what Star Trek means and how all these, and being able to juggle these different types of shows that they're writing. I feel like even just it's season 3 of Discovery, I feel like I was like a little baby consultant. It's like, and I've learned so much since then that I hope I didn't screw anything up. Just please, I promise I'm a really nice person. And I really don't like getting yelled at.
I wish I could say that I had faith in the Star Trek fandom to not yell at you on Twitter. I wish I could say that. I wish I could.
Yeah, my life improved dramatically once I learned that you should use the mute and block button as much as you want.
Amen.
And it's okay.
So Turquoise Sea had an interesting question here. You did consulting on Lower Decks, right? Or have?
So I did not work on season 1.
Okay.
I was lucky enough to be brought in when they started working on season 2. And then Mike, whom I love, Mike McMahon, the showrunner.
Mm-hmm.
I love this dude. And I think anyone who's seen him on a panel gets it. Gets that he gets it.
Yeah.
You know, so when they brought me on for season 2, obviously season 1 hadn't aired yet. And so I got to see all the rough cuts. That was a great weekend. That was a great
amazing.
weekend.
That's
and
fabulous.
Then Mike was literally like, we had a meeting scheduled to discuss it. And, you know, so he could kind of let me know where they were going and what they wanted to do and stuff. And so I emailed him and I was like, hey, got through the season, like, awesome, you know, can't wait to talk later. And then, you know, through his assistant and everything, we scheduled something for later in the week. And then he couldn't wait. And he called me. He was like, did you like it? Like, please tell me you like it.
Oh, that's adorable.
Because he's like us. We're just Star Trek fans trying to make Star Trek content for people.
Yeah.
And we want people to like it. We feel like we like it. But like you said, you never know.
Yeah. Well, that's gotta the interesting thing about the, you know, where we are in media right now, because all the big franchises like are being made by people who grew up loving said big franchises, and so it's like everybody's like, do you like my Star Trek? I hope it's good Star Trek. Whereas, you know, back then they were like, I don't know, throw an alien in it, it's probably fine.
Exactly. All they were going off of was like 3 years of sort of disjointed things from 20 years ago.
Yeah,
and it's just like, oh crap. Yeah, it's great. And I'm wearing Badgie shirt. I love Lower Decks is my sense of humor. It is so everything I love about Star Trek. And because the other thing, I have my Voyager tattoo, but right next to it is a Galaxy Quest ship.
Nice.
So Galaxy Quest is my other, and I feel like it was that level of humor where I was in on the joke and I never felt like I was being laughed at.
Yes.
And that's a balance, man. Yeah. They really nailed it.
I was worried because I've said this on the stream before. I'm not a huge Rick and Morty fan. So when they were like, oh, the guys from Rick and Morty are doing a Star Trek, I was like, okay, cool. But then it ended up it's such a Star Trek show. Like, it's goofy and silly and like over the top, but it still like catches everything that makes you love Star Trek. Like, that season finale was just so friggin' incredible.
Oh my god, it was so funny. My partner posted on Twitter, he was like, I need this to come out because Erin won't shut up about how excited she is for the finale. Because it had all my favorite lines in it, and I knew that they were coming, and I couldn't say them yet. Like the Dominion War conspiracy theorist is probably my favorite person that's ever existed in a Star Trek fandom, where he's like, changelings aren't real, the Dominion War was fake.
Yeah.
Like,
and by favorite, we mean if we met that person in real life, we would punch him repeatedly in the face, but exactly.
Right. But the line was perfect. And then, of course, the other big stuff in the finale that I don't know if we're being spoiler free, so I won't say anything else.
Not, just in case. But I never actually finished Turquoise C's question, the poor person, which was, when you're approaching science for Lower Decks, which is just zaniness incarnate, do Mike and the crew really, really care about getting the physics right, or is it just more like, you know, hey, just make sure that a Trekkie isn't just going to laugh at us on Twitter?
Right. Yeah, I cherish the relationship I have with Lower Decks. The fact that they want to use me at all is fabulous. And I think that they, so the relationship that I have with them is and that was like that conversation with Mike up front. He's like, all right, so you get it now. Like, you get what we're doing. So like, here's what we're thinking. We don't care. We know it's ridiculous. We don't really care if we're getting, you know, X, Y, and Z right, because that sort of ridiculous stuff has showed up in Star Trek before. So we're going along those lines. It's just like I said earlier, don't say anything explicitly wrong, you know, when you're referring to any space technology, anything like that. But he knows too, as a Star Trek fan, I will look for opportunities to put in Easter eggs and like science-based ones, you know, that it's just like... Do you want to
take credit for the Spock helmet now, or...
Oh my god, that was so good. That was so good. Yeah.
Also,
oh my
just
god,
so you know,
so
your partner is in chat talking about how much you were talking about the episode.
Hi.
But sorry, please continue.
Good old Jedi AK-47. So... Yeah, I did not shut up about it. No, but like so I'll send notes and they'll just be like, hey, here's an opportunity if they're talking, for example, about tech on the ship, right? We have our Rutherford engineer. He's a big ship nerd. And so, being able to go through and be like, well, yeah, if we want to be talking about the engine, why don't we mention this and this? And just where it's not going to be wrong. We can invent stuff from scratch and just make it sound right. And I'm happy to help with that. And I think I've invented a fair share of fake technologies working with those guys, which is great. But then also just to be like, this would be kind of a funny joke. Like if you're going to throw out numbers, here's like a little Easter egg that you could do. And you're like, oh yeah, that's awesome.
Just like a super physics nerd Easter egg.
Yeah, exactly. So they get it and I get it. And that's why I am so grateful to work with those guys, because it's an opportunity for me to because my origin of being a science consultant, it's a science consultant. I work on sci-fi, and typically sci-fi is very heavy, and particularly if they're calling a science consultant. And so for me now, who's transitioning more into writing and the creative aspect, that I now get to work on a comedy show and see what that process is like and see how that differs from these hour-long sci-fi dramas is really enlightening for me, and it's a lot of fun. I love it.
That's awesome. I kind of want to throw a Techno Babble challenge your way now.
Oh.
Just like the ship is the warp core is about to go critical and the ship is falling into a black hole. What would the engineer say that they need to do to fix it and save the ship?
Awesome. Okay, so if they're falling into a black hole, you're going to want to reinforce the hull, and we have our God, see, I'm terrible with like names,
no,
so this
fine.
is why I keep all my reference books handy. But there's the structural integrity field. That's a component of our Star Trek ship. So you want to enhance the structural integrity field, because the gravitational well in a black hole is so extreme that you're going to be subjected to something called spaghettification. So the gravity at your nacelles is going to be higher than it is on the bridge. And so you want to keep the ship from stripping itself apart. Getting to warp is going to be tricky because space-time is going to be so warped near a black hole that you're going to want to put your full power to your full engine power to impulse engines and just try to move away from that black hole, because the escape velocity is increasing as you start to fall into it. So you're going to use your impulse until you have enough energy that you can go to warp, all while maintaining your structural integrity fields and make sure that the hull stays intact. Shields aren't going to help you, so you can transfer that. But yeah, that's my Techno Babble answer.
That was fabulous. I loved it.
Oh God, I gotta write like a love letter to Mike Akuda though, man, and Rick Sternbach.
It was so funny. So like, I'm not as huge of a Trekkie as other people on our team are. Like, my buddy Thomas, who's our lead ship artist, is the biggest Trekkie who ever trekked. It was so funny because I happened to be standing at a table at STLV last year that they had. Some people from the Star Trek experience were like gathering around and telling stories about working on that thing and stuff. And then Mike and Denise came up to just like chat with them, and I was like, oh, this is cool, I guess I'll just hang out. And Thomas was like, give me your phone, I need to take pictures of you talking to the Okudas.
It's so great though. I mean, because I've met Mike and Denise and Rick Sternbach so many times because they just wander the halls at STLV, and likewise, it's like, oh yeah, we met before.
Yeah,
we have.
If you know, you know, and if you don't, it's got to be such a weird level of like. I was thinking about that with like some of the people who were in the shows or worked on the shows, like the strange level of famous where like you're in your normal everyday life and nobody knows who you are, and then like for a couple of weekends a year you are a god, and then you just go back to like coaching your kid's soccer team.
Yeah, it's really interesting, and I'm obviously have nowhere near that level of recognizability, but doing the conventions for so many years, people know that I do these science talks. And so I have two stories about this. I'll try to make them quick. The first story,
take all the time you need,
is that I go through, yeah, and as a Star Trek fan, I love this stuff, right? So I'm wandering the halls just as much as Rick and Mike and all those guys. And I was actually talking to Aaron Eisenberg,
Ah.
and he was a supporter of mine from day one. We met at Dragon Con, and he couldn't believe that I went to conventions to teach. He was like, I do nothing. Like, I sit here and I get to meet people and hang out, and you're like teaching people. And he was blown away by that and just loved that I would bring an educational aspect to these fandoms. And so he had been supportive of me from day one. And then we would obviously run into each other at many, many conventions. I got to know Melissa, and I got to, we all got to know each other much better. And then in Vegas a couple years ago, I was going through and we saw each other, and I was like, oh, hey. And I'm at his table chatting, and a handful of people came up, and I, excused myself and step aside. And I'm like, yeah, do your thing. And they were like, no, we want a picture with you. And Erin was like, damn right you do. She's the real star. She's the scientist.
Oh man, I loved that guy so much.
I had so much feelings. Yeah, it's a really, really nice memory. I'm very grateful for that. But the other funny story, since my partner is in the chat, I'm gonna embarrass him a little bit. But we talked about the Star Trek cruise. Again, he's been with me, seeing all of these celebrities, people we've watched our whole lives have these really weird experiences. He comes and does all of this stuff with me. I have never seen him fan more hard than when Michael Westmore walked into the lobby of the hotel. He lost his mind. He grabbed, it was that grip, of you're like, and so it is crazy to think like people like Michael Westmore and Rick Sternbach and Mike Okuda and all of these other people behind the scenes who are legacies and who are completely influential in this world building of this world that we love so much. Have very anonymous lives most of the time, except for those weekends.
Yeah.
Crazy.
It's crazy. I mean, I even got a little bit of it myself because I'd be walking the halls with my wife at STLV, and every now and then an STO fan would recognize me from the streams and say hey and ask a couple of questions, and I just got to be like, yeah, honey, I'm kind of a big deal. I don't know if you know.
Yeah, I'm kind of cool. I'm kind of a big deal. Exactly. I love that. That's awesome.
Yeah, it's awesome. Okay, so I think I'm gonna get ready to wrap up here because I got to go pick up my daughter in a few minutes. But let's see. So you can't talk about any of the stuff you're working on now, but tomorrow is the big premiere that a bunch of people are going to for Discovery Season 3. That was your first, kind of baby. Without going into any like details about it, what was the experience like of, stepping into working on a Star Trek show from this convention stuff?
Yeah, I think because the way that I was able to kind of come into Discovery first and get to start to know the people at that level behind the scenes, it was really through my friend Bowie Kim, and Erica Lapolte, who are a team of writers. They wrote a lot of the Saru storylines in like season 1 and season 2, and they're fabulous writers. And we, became friends, and so we've always kept in touch, and you always just kind of get that quick text message of like, hey, if I word it like this, and I don't know what it's for, I'm just like, yeah, I would just phrase it like that. And so that's kind of the relationship I've had with a lot of writers here in Hollywood and in the entertainment industry, is just oh, hey, I know someone to call. Let me call this person and we'll get an answer for this.
Yeah.
But then to be brought into the fold to that extent of it's like, oh no, like now the curtain is open and you are welcome behind the scenes. I would say probably
secrets.
I know all the secrets, good and bad. I think for me the most it's the fact that it's a blessing and a curse, right? To come into a show at season 3 because they've established technology. I didn't have a say in the spore drive. The spore drive exists.
The saucer
which
spins,
is fine.
get used to it.
We make it work. But But the good part about that, though, is that I already have a feel for what they're going for, and I already have an attachment to the characters. And as I kind of alluded to with Kate Mulgrew and Captain Janeway, it's getting to write, and I'm not, like I said, I adjust. It's not that I'm writing this stuff from scratch, but getting to rephrase dialogue for characters that I love. And then I think that that's where my brain might explode, is to hear those lines.
Oh my God, I hadn't even thought about that. That's amazing.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a thing that's gonna happen. Yeah, so we'll see. That's what I'm the most excited about. And that's where I found too that, and I had kind of alluded to this as well, just while we've been chatting, that my career has kind of pivoted a little bit in the same way that, Andre Bermanis and Narain Shakar, they both started out as science consultants in the 90s for Star Trek. And now, Andre Bermanis is doing Cosmos and the Orville, and Narain is doing The Expanse.
Yeah.
And and then getting that thrill of writing characters that I love, writing stories, having more of a say in the creative aspect, and seeing the process of getting these sort of stories written. That's what was an awakening for me, to just go like, oh, I get how those guys ended up where they are now, and I want to do the same thing. Please and thank you.
So when you're running your own Star Trek show, what's it going to be about?
Oh my God. I've said this before, and I'm a little annoyed that I love Prodigy as much as I do, because it's like, that's the show. And between that and Lower Decks, I think because I have such a comedy personality, most, if I'm watching something other than Star Trek, it's going to be a comedy. I watch a lot of animation. I love kids shows. I love STEM outreach, and engaging with kids. So I'm just like, God, Prodigy, they stole it. That's what I would do.
I everything I've heard about it sounds amazing. I can't wait to watch it.
I can't wait.
Yeah,
I can't wait. People are gonna love it. I will advocate for it. Up and down the chain. I just think it's amazing. Kate Mulgrew is just the icing on the cake.
It is. Yeah. Yeah, she is. Well, Erin, thank you so much for joining us on the stream. It's been an absolute pleasure talking to you. I'd love to have you back on sometime, especially when you can talk a little bit more about, what you actually did.
Yeah. We'll chat after season 3. Until then, people can watch me freak out about characters I love in Star Trek Online.
So where do people go to watch you stream?
Yeah, so my Twitch handle is Dr. Erin Mac, which is the same as my Twitter. It's DRERINMAC. And I do Star Trek Online on Wednesdays, although I'm starting probably in November and December. My schedule is going to be a little bit more random, so just check my Twitter page. I'll always post when I'm about to stream. And I think the next mission that I will be doing tomorrow is Admiral Tuvok is taking me into fluidic space, and I'm not going to lie, I lost my mind. So I'm still early on. So if you want to watch someone who's playing it for the very first time, that's a
really good series of missions. Wait till you get to Mindscape. But anyway, well,
excellent. I can't wait.
I kind of want to see if I miss it, someone clip it when she plays Mindscape, because I want to see that.
I'll say I've been saving them. People have wanted to watch them after the fact on YouTube and stuff too. But I gotta say before we go, I want to thank you, and I want to thank all of the Star Trek Online players, fans, developers. Everyone has been so fun, so supportive. I never thought I would enjoy playing an MMO, genuinely, and I'm loving every second of it. And it's all because of this incredible community. I mean that so genuinely, that it's just been such a blast of an experience. So thank you for welcoming me into this fold as you have.
We're very glad to have you. And maybe next time we actually have a Star Trek convention in person, we'll get you on stage to chat with us about STO and science and things.
Anytime.
That'd be dope.
Thank you.
All right. Well, thank you, Erin. It has been lovely. Everybody else, stick around. I'm going to send you to raid. It looks like there is a mom who is streaming Star Trek Online, so I want you all to go watch her. Be nice. And thank you very much once again. Bye-bye, everybody. I think I'm just going to start signing off this way now because I love it so much. Live long and prosper!